My name's Kyle. When we talk about the word bonding, right, we naturally assume that there first must be a connection, right? And the primary driver of connection is having conversations. So my question is this: how much does language play into intergenerational bonding? And has there been studies that look into intergenerational bonding that can also happen within families where language is divisive? Maybe I'll give you an unfiltered example of my family. So I would love to be closer to my grandma, but she only speaks dialect. She has zero education. So even Chinese, even though she's from China, she can't speak Chinese. She can't read. And I can't speak dialect. My Chinese is already horrendous. So there's always been that gap, right? Even when I want to try, unless I really go and learn Hokkien from scratch, which I can, of course, but how, for the families and the generations like this, have there been studies that show that you can still bond and not just have that filial piety, but bond in such situations?
Hey, hi, my name is Natalie. I'm from an organization called SG, Her Empowerment, or She for short. So my question is, firstly, I just want to say, as a mother of two, I really believe in the involvement of grandparents, but a challenge I face in my own household is really how can grandparents be more involved if they're still juggling work responsibilities, right? So I think there's a lot of push to encourage, women, for example, who have left the workforce due to caregiving back to work, and many of these are your mature women who are grandmothers. On the surface, this seems to maybe be a bit in tension with this, encouragement of more involvement of grandparents in caregiving. And it's also about the staging of like when you leave work or when you return to work, and also when your kids are having, when your children are having their kids. So perhaps one way, of course, is through more flexi work, right, which has just been announced, but there seems to be also some pushback from employers. So maybe beyond flexi work, what more do you think we can do as a society, be it policies or mindsets change or otherwise, to help these older workers balance both home and work duties? Yep, thank you.
Okay, maybe I can, I have a short sharing on that question because so my mom works and I don't. I volunteer lah. So my mom is the one who works and then she takes care of my kids. Oh no, I'm a paile. I'm like, she's a power woman. Yeah. And I totally agree with what you said about the tension between work and grandparenting. So my mom is here. She just rushed over from her training program, and she actually said, "Should I retire?" I was like, "No, do your thing, Mom. You've been in this long enough. You've racked up your professional experience." And I do think, as much as we want the government to kind of encourage this juggling of work and grandparenting or parenting obligations, it's also on us, in our own family arrangements. Because frankly, okay, as much as we talk about policies, family is also very personal, which is why it's such a sensitive and controversial and difficult topic to talk about in these days when views are so divergent, right? So it's really on us as a society to encourage and recognize that, hey, grandparents also need their own lives. Because you can either swing both ways. Some of them are like, stay out of my family, I want to bring them out my own way, you go live your life and I live my own life. Then there's the other extreme, it's like, Mom, do everything for me, I need to work, I need to have my own life too. So where do we find the middle, compromise and good ground to kind of recognize that I also want you to have a fulfilled life, including your work, your professional experience, and your enjoyment of grandparenting. And I think these are questions that we do want to kind of ask other people of our generation, the middle generation, where we are getting our parents to take care of our kids. And so some of people were saying that, hey, we should have grandparent leave, right? Actually, because, if the mom is also working and the grandma is also working and then the child falls ill and then extra hands, maybe the mom has to use up all her childcare leave, so maybe we should have some grandparental leave, something to think about. So just some thoughts on your question. Anyone wants to share about the question on the language capabilities, or even on this question about juggling work and grandparenting?
I think the language issue, the working issues are all very typical of, it really reflects our society, because we are quite special in that sense that because of this whole change, right, of Mandarin, speak Mandarin and all those, that young children actually stop speaking and they don't learn dialects. So because of this, you do see a generation gap in terms of language, and this is very real. But I think we also realize that the grandparents are, who really cannot speak Chinese, for example, are really the older grandparents, and we are seeing changes in the grandparents who they are also trying to learn English or trying to learn Mandarin to be able to communicate with their grandchildren. So it takes two ways, and I do see clan associations also offering dialect speaking lessons for children and young people, so that there could be way to bridge that communication gap. But whether they can communicate well or not, grandparents will always love their grandchildren, and you can feel it. Yeah, so for grandmothers, especially grandmothers who are working, well, if the grandfather retire early, they should try to help. But for grandmothers, this is really a new phenomenon. I mean, 20 years ago, maybe a lot of the mothers are housewives themselves, so there's no such issue. But now we really have to grapple with this, and I agree, and I think we should have policymakers looking into it. Because if they recognize that grandparents are important in the family, then there should be policy support for grandparents. Grandparent leave could be one, and in some other countries, they have some kind of allowance and all that for grandparents. I don't know whether it's possible in Singapore, but yeah, we can look at what's being done internationally to also give us some ideas.
Can I offer you a solution? As our Singapore setting, we come from a dialect background, but obviously our founding father decided to shift towards Mandarin to unify and things like that. In our generation here, if we still have dialect, speak dialect to our children. That's the beginning. My children, because we live in intergenerational place, they pick up Hokkien. So it's very unusual because when they go out, they can actually speak Hokkien to the hawkers. And because it's pick it up, because I speak Hokkien to my mother. So among ourselves, if we still have this ability to speak dialect, use that first as a solution. And then from there, we can then perhaps flourish our dialect language again. Thank you.
I think based on what he said, I find that to be quite true, because even though my maternal grandparents can speak English, and they speak English to me, they do tend to speak in Teochew to my parents, and they can speak Teochew, and that was also where I slowly began to pick up on my dialect skills and learn how to speak Teochew in that sense. So I think that's something that is very real and something that I experienced by myself. But originally what I wanted to share was that I think language barriers still do exist, because personally for me, my Chinese is pretty atrocious as well. And while I definitely am closer to my maternal grandparents because I live with them, the language barrier also comes into effect with regards to my paternal grandparents. Though I still try to visit them, because we cannot communicate as much, I definitely feel that though we love each other very much, the bond definitely cannot be as strong as what I have with my maternal grandparents. Even though, yeah, I said don't compare, but human beings compare, right?